Chlamydia. Picture this. A microscopic, ninja-like organism that sneaks into your nether regions like a stealthy intruder in the night. It spreads through all sorts of fun activities, like unprotected hanky-panky. Chlamydia is what you might call a sneaky sneak. It's an infection of the genital tract caused by bacteria, which you can get when you put your nose where you shouldn't have. Of course, I'm not talking about an actual nose. Early on, chlamydia infections often cause few or no symptoms. So if you're lucky enough, you'll experience painful urination that feels like the devil's caravan is passing through your precious parts. You may get pain in the stomach, aka the abdomen, fever, and bleeding during periods for ladies. For the gentlemen, well, your pecker might fall off. Joking! Or am I? All that pleasure will last around 5 to 14 days after you've been exposed to chlamydia germs, so you'll have just enough time to think if that little frisky night was worth it. Spoiler alert, it probably wasn't. Gonorrhea is a bacterium that's like a party animal you can't shake off. It loves to mingle and make itself at home in your most intimate spaces. Antibiotics will save your lusty soul, so don't rent a coffin yet, but don't count on getting away so easily either. Oh my dear friends, it's definitely not going to be a chilly resort unless you are a masochist, of course. Look to expect thick, cloudy, or bloody discharge from your genitalia, pain in places where it shouldn't be, swollen testicles, rectal discharge, soreness or bleeding, and like a cherry on top, you'll be scratching your butt off like a prehistoric monkey. And I might have said a sad fact for feminists, symptoms of infection in the female genital tract tend to appear within 10 days of exposure to germs, while the boys will start their journey straight through body hell after just 5 days. Which, so to think, is not so much of a win, eh? Trichomoniasis. Do you really need another reason to avoid intimacy with the wrong people who look like corpses, even the very pretty corpses? Okay, then I have yet another gift you might get if you're not careful. Introducing the all-fancy Trichomoniasis, which is a common sexually transmitted infection caused by a parasite that is too tiny to see with the naked eye. The parasite is called Trichomonas vaginalis. As you may have guessed, my detectives, this organism spreads during intimacy with someone who has already had the infection. When trichomoniasis causes symptoms, they may appear within 5 to 28 days after being exposed to the parasite, and range from mild irritation to serious swelling called inflammation, discharge from your precious little Peter, and pain during your dirty business. Don't worry, you won't die from this one, but I wouldn't be so sure about the next one though. HIV. Ever heard of love till your last breath? Well, after receiving this love gift, you might just find yourself in need of that coffin. Remember what I said about renting one? It's about time. HIV is an infection caused by the human immunodeficiency virus. HIV interferes with the body's ability to fight off viruses, bacteria, and fungi that cause serious and sometimes lethal illnesses. Essentially, HIV doesn't kill you directly, but it sure messes up your defenses. The symptoms of HIV vary depending on how long you've had the disease and whether you've received treatment for it, so the chances are only slightly better than in Russian roulette. But please, let's avoid both. The only way to know if you have HIV is to get tested because its symptoms might not be as obvious. They include fever, chills, headache, muscle aches, and sore throat. Without treatment, HIV can progress to AIDS, another life-threatening disease. Consider it God's gift for those of us who love the flesh. AIDS. As mentioned earlier, without HIV treatment, the chronic stage of HIV infection may progress to AIDS in about 10 years, give or take. AIDS is life-threatening, so it's best not to underestimate this spooky fella. Symptoms of AIDS can include seemingly harmless ones like fever, weakness, rapid weight loss, and extreme fatigue. Unpleasant, but not as terrifying as you'd expect from a lethal disease. Besides, who couldn't use some rapid weight loss? But that doesn't mean I'm heading to the nearest brothel. You know what's really scary? After contracting this thing, you might experience depression, pneumonia, and even memory loss. Just imagine this absurd scenario. You've had a delightful encounter with a majestic lady after a hard day, feeling wonderful, and then suddenly, you're like, hold on, what the heck is going on right now exactly? Of course, I'm just exaggerating, but you get the point. Genital herpes. Let's dial down the heat level from now on, shall we? From deadly stuff, let's move on to something more commonplace. Take genital herpes, for example, a sexually transmitted infection that spreads as easily as you can say its name. It's caused by a type of the herpes simplex virus called HSV. The virus enters the body through small breaks in the skin or mucous membranes, and then the fun begins. Most people with HSV never know they have it, which only adds a layer of uncertainty to the game of try your luck and possibly mess your guts inside out. The low awareness is due to the fact that they either have no symptoms or their symptoms are too mild to be noticed, just like your pecker. Sorry, couldn't resist poking fun at your holy weapon size in a video about venereal diseases. Anyways, if there are symptoms, they tend to appear within 12 days of being exposed to HSV. The first time you get them tends to be the worst. Some people never get the symptoms again, which may sound helpful enough. For others, the symptoms come and go over many years, which may sound just as horrible as it is. Genital herpes symptoms can include small red bumps, blisters called vesicles, or open sores called ulcers. These symptoms often show up around the genitals, rectum, and mouth. Not exactly the most flattering places to have them. Those little scars may take a week or longer to heal, and your vulva may discharge. Hooray? HPV is one of the most common types of sexually transmitted infections, and that doesn't make it any better. Some forms of HPV greatly raise the risk of cervical cancer. Told ya, it doesn't make it better. Other forms cause genital warts, but most often HPV has no symptoms. Yet, if symptoms do occur, you might experience a small bump or group of bumps in the genital area. These can be large or small and raised or flat. Several warts close together take on that cauliflower shape, itching or discomfort in the genital area, and don't even count on healthy and enjoyable private time with your lover. Just don't, or there will be blood, literally. And one last funny fact about HPV, rarely, warts can also grow in the mouth or throat of a person who has had oral contact with an infected person. So, like parents used to say in our childhood, don't put dirty things in your mouth. Hepatitis. There are 3 brothers, or sisters, pick your type. Hepatitis A, Hepatitis B, and Hepatitis C, and they're all contagious infections that affect the liver. They each are caused by a different virus, but you aren't going to like any of those fellas. Hepatitis B and C are more serious than Hepatitis A, but each can inflame the liver. HAV typically spreads through contaminated water or food, or close contact with an infected person. HBV chooses less pleasant paths, such as transmission through exposure to infected blood, semen, or other bodily fluids. It can also be passed from an infected mother to her baby during childbirth. HCV, on the other hand, is primarily transmitted through exposure to infected blood, most commonly through sharing needles or equipment for injecting drugs. Some people never get hepatitis symptoms. For those who do, the symptoms may happen weeks after exposure to one of the hepatitis viruses. So, if you're fortunate in your misfortune, hepatitis symptoms can include fatigue, upset stomach, and vomiting, our beloved random pain or discomfort in the stomach area, and the worst for me personally, loss of appetite. I wouldn't bear it. Personally. I'm so happy that I wouldn't be able to get it, due to the fact that no one would ever come closer than a mile around me. Lucky me. Oh, and do you know what jaundice is? It's when your skin turns yellow and so are your eyes. New style is always nice, huh? Syphilis, the world infamous bastard. The disease affects the skin, mouth, and everything down below, those words that YouTube doesn't like to hear from small channels like mine. It can also involve many other parts of the body, including the brain and heart, if you let it take control over your precious body. The symptoms of syphilis may occur in 3 stages: primary, secondary, and tertiary, which just signals how bad things are going to get for you. As you might have guessed, the tertiary stage is not quite good to get. During the first stage of syphilis, 1 or more small, painless sores called chancres form where the germs enter the body. Usually, they form in the genitals, rectum, tongue, or lips. As syphilis worsens, the symptoms can include a rash marked by rough, discolored spots over any area of the body, including the palms and soles. The rash often doesn't itch. Often. Not always. But expect other things such as fever, swollen lymph nodes, fatigue, and a vague feeling of discomfort, and do I really need to keep going? Here's my point. Love each other, but don't do it without bloody thinking. Don't put your stuff in holes that aren't built for it, and don't let anything wicked enter your body. Got it? Now, go on and rest. Read a book, drink some tea, but don't go to the public house, at least for the next few days.